delighted to talk with Chevonne Hobbs. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Now of CGI.
Yes, yeah.
How are you enjoying that?
Really good, actually. I'm 5 months in now to the role, but it's going really, really well. Great culture, which is always a bonus.
It is. I know the culture quite well, and it's so remarkable how they keep reinventing it and doing it, and people come through with the new culture. But anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about user journeys and human design and all that sort of thing. And you said that you're doing some work on user journeys. And what does that, in practical terms, what does that actually mean? What sorts of things are organizations doing to get some value from that?
So what I'm helping a lot of organizations with is just thinking more outside of the box of just writing a standard process. So instead of just thinking process steps, we're thinking more outside around the people aspect. We're thinking about their culture, the technology, if there's suppliers and partners that are involved in that, and also the information that comes with all of those things that actually has a dependency on those process steps. So then you start to build an all-encompassing user journey, which then starts to deliver more value as an IT service.
So would that be similar to what we brought in ITER 4, which was value stream? The value stream has been around in IT for IT and other areas, DevOps, for a while. But is that what you really mean, the whole end-to-end process?
So value stream is definitely one part. So what I do is I work with the group of people in the business. So it's taking a single service. So if we take, for example, the new starter journey. So it's having the people in the room who are involved in bringing somebody on board. And what we do is we look at it at a very high level, which starts to pitch out what the value stream is. But then underneath that, we start to dig a little bit deeper into what the process steps are for each part of that value stream. Once that has been mapped out, we then look at all of the people who are involved at each of those process steps. And that's really important because what we're trying to identify is what the operational levels are. So how long would it take for somebody to perform that task? What are they dependent on? What information do they need? What tools are they using? So then when you start to build your full end-to-end journey, you can start to identify where there's areas of waste that can be removed. And actually, it's a fantastic experience when you're in the room with a group of people, and even people who are actually doing the same job. And they turn to their teammates and they say, "Oh, you do that?" And it's like, "Yeah, I do that." They say, "Well, why do you do that?" And so it really
We've always done that.
Yeah, we've always done that. And it really starts to trigger a conversation around, well, actually, should we even bother? But also checking that against things like audits. So making sure, well, actually, is this part of like a service assurance checklist? Is it part of a compliance or legislation that we have to do it? But actually, it's starting to identify what can we drop out, and then where can we start to improve and build much more streamlined processes that deliver faster services.
Yeah, and it's the whole picture rather than just the workflow in the tool or the process that's been drawn out. I mean, I was working last week with a client where we're really starting to map these things on, visibly on the wall, and all the, as you say, the different stakeholders and their inputs and out, and you get people going, we're doing that as well.
Yeah.
What about because you also talked about human-centered design. What is that from your perspective? What does that actually involve? What sort of activities are people doing? Because it sounds absolutely sensible. We're designed for humans and we're designed for people. Is it for the development of what you're saying there with the user journey, or is it something else that you are doing on top of that?
So, human-centered design, I think, I was thinking about this actually over this past week because it's something that I will be presenting on at SIDS. And I was thinking, actually, when we think about human-centered design, it's almost assuming people know what we mean by that. And actually that's quite dangerous as well, because we could either be doing it too lightly or too in-depth. But there needs to be a really good balance. For me personally, I've always used the double diamond model. And with the double diamond, the first stage of that is the research. And actually, I actually find this part the most fun. Because in the research, what you're actually doing is you're meeting with the individuals of that service. You will either carry out an assessment. So it's always good to be prepared with some really good questions that are aligned to either an ITIL practice question or an ISO legislation compliance. But just really understanding as well where their key challenges are. And what I personally like to do is ask those questions, but also allow that person to just speak and talk about their day in the life of experience. And actually, you find out so much more from those initial conversations than you would potentially in, say, like a brainstorming session. So I'd like to do that and capture all of that information. I do still carry out brainstorm workshops, and we kind of group like similarities and challenges across the team. But it's so important to understand how people are working in their environment, why they do what they do.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to designing your end-to-end journey, you're not just factoring in, well, the tool says we have to do it this way. You're factoring in the natural way people are working, but also how they are motivated and how they are rewarded. Because if it doesn't align to the strategic KPIs,
Sure. Yeah.
then your process will probably fail.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot in there about, giving people the chance to express themselves. Not a lot of IT in the past has been, well, we're going to talk to them. No, we need to go and listen. We need to let them engage and have that kind of physical interaction, that this list shows, active listening.
Yes.
That's a key part of it, I think, which IT's not been great at doing in the past. And I think it's a big step. It's a big step forward.
Yeah.
Just one other thing of that then, because that's when you mentioned the onboarding or the new starter, it's one of the sort of key areas where I'm seeing people doing sort of XLA, plans and things to say we're going to do this without it necessarily being, how many hours or how many minutes or how many seconds. Or is that also something that you're involved in terms of developing that as a commitment or as a promise? Or
Yeah. So obviously with like the XLAs, what I do is when we've actually built out that whole end-to-end journey, we then sit down and we work out, well, what are the actual end user touch points throughout that journey? And we start to map that out as another sort of workflow that goes over the top of that journey. And then we start to mark out, well, how will we capture that feedback? What kind of measurements do we have today? What kind of metrics do we promise?
Yeah.
We will deliver to? And so then we can then work out how we can then start to drive that continual improvement throughout the end to end. Another point you made there, though, Barclay, which is a really important point, which was about the active listening. There's another reason why it's so important to do that user research piece up front. And it's when you've actually implemented that new, revised, or improved service or brand new service, it's about bringing all of those people on that journey. So now, if you've had the opportunity to speak to them at the very start and you've listened to them, you've provided them with some feedback, you've explained to them that's fantastic, or actually we can't do it that way because of these reasons, but you're continuously bringing them through that journey all the way through to implementation. So then everybody's bought into that idea. And then that also drives your XLAs. So then you get a much more promising XLA statistic at the end because you've brought people on that journey with you. They've bought into it. So then you're not just improving the customer experience, but you're also improving the employee experience as well.
So it's like a combination of service management, stakeholder management, good comms, all those kind of things coming together. I mean, I think it's a really positive time for all that. You know, I think there's a number of models and methods, which is good. But, you know, a lot of the stuff you've been talking about there is also, you know, just good engagement, good stakeholder management, all those kind of things. It's a shame we have to keep reminding people to do that. Because the other one is at the end, you know, to just make sure that you demonstrate that you've achieved those things.
Yeah.
And that's what we're still not great at. And hopefully the tools get better at helping us to do that. But what do you think? I mean, just finally, what do you think is the next thing we need to see, you know, in terms of how we develop as an industry? Have you got any sort of thoughts or requirements as to it'd be great if ITIL did this or ISO had that or XLAs were, you know, you talked there about clarifying on definitions.
Yeah. I think what we need to do is we need to look at different types of methods and, you know, frameworks and models and bring something together like a nice package. So where we think of human-centered design, that's focused on feelings. It's focused on the emotional aspects of what drives people. If we think about ITIL brings in a selection of disciplines, whereas the ISO side brings in that assurance that we're doing the right thing. And so ultimately, if you can package up a selection, not just one, but a selection of methods into your designs, like Lean Six Sigma as well, which is another one I've mentioned, it brings a much more rounded and much more successful way of how we design and deliver services that people will begin to love.
Well, we can get a tool or a methodology that can define that and can do it without offending people's licensing and all that sort of stuff, then we'll be in a good shape. Okay, Chevonne, thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Really good stuff. Thank you.